Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for hosting today's hearing, and to our chairwoman, to our witnesses, thank you as well. Ms. Bailey, this question is for you. In your testimony, one of the key points you make is that GSEs aren't meeting the expectations of their mandate to support affordable housing initiatives. So first, can you specifically tell us more about how the GSEs could be doing better? And second, can you discuss what Congress could do to leverage the GSEs and the federal home loan banks to close the racial home ownership gap and the affordable housing crisis?
Thank you for the question. Absolutely. The GSEs continue to underserve all communities despite a public interest mission to making sure there's broad credit liquidity in every communities at the same time. We support and are pleased with the Federal Housing Finance Agency's recent release of the GSE's Equitable Housing Finance Goals. We've needed things like this for a very long time because of our nation's history of housing discrimination, where we've created equitable opportunities. And in the first 35 years of the FHA Insure program, $120 billion of that program mostly went to white Americans. Less than 2% of those FHA insured mortgage loans went to families of color. So white families had a head start. So we need equitable programs because families of color don't have the resources built up from long-term homeownership that can be passed forward to successive generations. So the Equitable Housing Finance Plans actually implement part of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act's, which has been in place for over 40 years, special purpose credit programs. These are simply programs that allow for lenders to look at their own individual borrowing and to see whom is it that they're underserving, and then to just create a targeted plan to bring in those consumers to make sure they have a fair chance because of the history of discrimination that those communities have faced. We also want to make sure that they affirmatively further fair housing because we've never fully enforced our fair lending laws, and they have an explicit responsibility to affirmatively further fair housing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Ms. Bailey, can you briefly discuss how corporate ownership of housing units at this scale prevents first-time home buyers from finding housing, and what Congress might do to act? In my community, the UNC Charlotte Urban Institute found that corporate landlords own over 11,000 housing units. So can you speak to this?
Sure, 1 out of 7 homes are actually being purchased by investors in the communities hardest hit by the Great Recession in the South and in the Midwest. So we need things like targeted first-generation down payment assistance, which is so different from first-time down payment assistance. This down payment assistance actually targets the families that our former housing policies have kept out. Current first-time home buyer programs are open and available to everyone. So even, wealthier people in high-resource communities could have access to them. By targeting down payment assistance by first generation, we go to those communities that we've left behind in communities all across our country. 1.7 million of those borrowers would be Black, 1.32 million Latino, 1.4 would be white, because again, these are the very communities and rural communities that have been locked out of opportunity for some of the same reasons. And many of these borrowers, up to 88,000, would also be Asian American and Pacific Islander and Native communities. So equitable policies are good for our economy because they help us to bring in the very communities we left out, but they also help to create jobs. A targeted down payment assistance by first generation would help us to generate billions of dollars in local revenues and thousands of jobs.
Thank you. Let me get in one last question, if you would. Mr. Zandi, can you discuss why the investment in LightSea is needed now more than ever before? The Light Tech, excuse me.
Yeah.
Because funding and Build Back Better would have provided a lot of relief.
Yeah, it would. And I know you've also worked very diligently on this and trying to make some changes in the funding related to the American Rescue Plan money to allow more light tech development. And I think that's the kind of thing we should be doing. It is the single largest funding source, federal government funding source for affordable rental housing. That is the largest program that the federal government operates. And it's very efficient, it's well understood, tried and true, and I think that's what we should be focused on.
Thank you so much. I'm out of time. Thank you so much,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Steele, is now recognized for 5 minutes.